Good morning, good afternoon, good evening. This is a first edition of the Milan podcast. It's a new initiative that we have taken um, to try and fill some of the gaps that we feel that is there in terms of the discussion that happens around Milan Twitter, mostly Milan Twitter, Milan Facebook, Milan WhatsApp. The kind of programming that we want to do essentially boils down to bringing fresh thoughts about what we feel about Milan's play, Milan's players, and where the direction in which the club is going, and essentially the Milan ethos that we feel that this great club bears. Having said that, this is a fun, light, and informal kind of a discussion. Uh, my name is Devapam Roy. You probably know me as Rossoneri on Twitter. Um, Let me introduce my co-colleagues here. Rajat.
Hi, guys. Looking forward to sharing our views, having wonderful, engaging discussions on Milan, along with Sam and Devapam. You know these guys from Twitter. They've been veterans in the Twitter space, sharing opinions on Milan for over a decade now. So really happy to be joining forces with them. You get to see our faces. You get to see the folks behind the keyboard as you listen into us and you listen into what we have to say. We're very excited to share our thoughts and opinions with you, and we look forward to your comments on the podcast as well.
It's good to be on. It's nice to have a conversation about Italian football again after a few years. So obviously I'm on Twitter at Sam Calcio, and I've been there for a long time and wrote for Forza Italian Football and Football Italia and some other places. And it's nice to sort of come back and discuss Serie A at maybe the most interesting crossroads that the league has been for some time, given the current climate around the footballing world. And I want to echo Raj's words as well. It'd be nice to have a real conversation and about the faces behind the keyboards, but you're allowed to see at least the furrowed brows behind the keyboards at the very least, and the anger and the passion that following Milan in 2023 really sort of brings out of you. You know, it's not the joy that once accompanied following it in 1991, perhaps, but it's certainly as interesting as it has ever been to cover an Italian football team. So happy to be part of this.
Thanks, guys. And to share with you all, this has been something that we have thought of before, but it felt very apt to start with now. Milan is going through a huge rebuild, a huge reboot. There are waves of emotion, especially in a lot of old Milan fans like me, some of you also. And essentially, we are taking, I don't know whether it's a bold or it's a brash new step into the future. And so it makes sense to, at this point in time, talk about it and share our thoughts with you. Our first topic today is the most obvious one, which is around the transfers that have happened so far. Milan has been very busy in the transfer market. If we say that the transfer market started in the month of June, so there is roughly around 7 weeks or 8 weeks since the season ended. And I think Yunus Musah, whenever he joins this week, he will become the 8th new joining for Milan in this season. So it's like one joining per week. That's an awesome, record, whichever way you look at it. So what we thought was that we'll try and go through each one of those transfers. So we start off our first transfer with Sportiello.
Yeah, I mean, Sportiello comes as a breath of fresh air for Milan, who saw calamity after calamity with Tatarusanu since he deputized for Mike. I think Sportiello is a battle-hardened Serie A keeper who's been around the block, and I think there's nothing particularly fancy about him. You know what to expect from him. He's a pretty good shot stopper. I think he's a considerable upgrade over Tatarusanu. Also fulfills the homegrown quota, which Milan so desperately need, with an increasingly depleting Italian representation within the squad. So I would give him a 3.5, maybe slightly on the higher side, but I think it will prove to be quite valuable as the season proceeds. Unless, of course, he comes up with more gaffes like he did in the friendly. But I'm quite happy that Milan finally have a pretty solid number 2.
Sam?
Yeah, I can't disagree with anything that Raj has said there. I think in an ideal world, he plays 10 games a season, like maximum. Like he's playing the dead rubber game at the end of the Champions League group. He's playing the Coppa Italia. He adds an Italian national representation, as Raj said, which is really useful for various financial fair play reasons. But in an ideal world, unless Maignan gets injured, I don't expect to see him a great deal. And he's an upgrade over Tatarusanu. I agree. He's a good shot stopper. 31, he's a good age for a goalkeeper. He's clearly got 4 or 5 years left if he can live out a decent sized contract. And then the Milan can sort of promote from within or get somebody else in. That is absolutely fine for me. I'm going to give it a 3 out of 5. It's a very functional, it's a very classic opening of the transfer window signing, just getting a backup goalkeeper, get that out of the way. You don't have any lingering concerns. You don't want to be going into August and September with just 1 or 2 reliable goalkeepers in the team. So as far as I'm concerned, perfectly solid, good Serie A experience, decent age, fills a gap, functional. 3 out of 5 for me.
Yeah. Anyone who was not on the Tata bandwagon, I must remind you that our Scudetto was won on the back of Tatarusanu saving Lautaro Martinez's penalty. Okay, that was the key. But coming to Sportiello, I feel this is a solid move. I'll give it 4 out of 5. He's Italian. He came on a free. He played most of last season for Atalanta. He was the goalkeeper of choice. So I feel that this is a solid 4 out of 5. Next is Luca Romero, another free signing. Let's start with Sam.
Well, I think he immediately ingratiated himself to Milan fans by scoring a goal that Van Basten would have been proud of against Real Madrid last week. I think I like many folks, were kind of expecting him to be signed and then immediately loaned out, and I expected him to be filling the roster, maybe back at a club like Lazio, not necessarily Lazio, but maybe another Serie A club that had a bit of a gap in the team. But I think his performance has thrown that in doubt a little bit. He gave a quote that said that he wants to play, he wants to compete at the team. And I think at 18 years old, he's clearly got some talent, he's clearly got some pace and some dribbling ability, as well as he knows his way around the goal and can strike a ball fairly well. The fact that he's come for free in a position that Milan desperately needed, not just quality players, bodies in. I'm giving this 4 out of 5. I'm not going to declare him the new Paulo Dybala like I've seen a few sort of articles try to suggest. I think that is ridiculous, to be honest. It's classic football hype.
Rajat, you agree?
Not quite. I mean, I do share Sam's enthusiasm. I probably wouldn't rate him as high as 4. Actually, I'd probably rate him somewhere bang in the center, maybe at a 2 or a 2.5. And the reason I say that is because we really don't know what to expect from this kid. And I think Sam touched upon whether this kid's going to be in the squad come the end of the summer window, or whether he's going to be loaned out. And given that there is still quite an excess of talent, and I don't mean high quality talent, but I mean bodies on the right side of the pitch today, which need shedding. And of course, Salamakers is fielding offers, Messias is fielding offers. I think Chukuwueze is going to unquestionably be the right winger. Is Romero going to be his deputy? Is he going to be his foil? We don't really know. And from the little that we've seen from the preseason friendlies, and not much can be read into it, but he does have a beautiful left foot. But as much as he scored that wonderful goal, he also skied a penalty out of the stadium. So we have to also take that into account, that he's extremely raw. And he has been very vocal about wanting to play behind the striker. I don't necessarily think he has the frame or the current maturity to take on that role. And Pioli is probably going to be moving more towards a 4-3-3 as the preseason friendlies have shown. So does he really have room in the squad, and is he actually going to add value? That remains to be seen. So from the output perspective, I wouldn't rate him very highly, and that's why the score is at about maybe 2 to 2.5.
I would say he was a safe signing at the moment that he was signed. We wanted, new bodies at the right winger, and we can safely say that he is probably better than Messias or whatever Salamakers on his best day will produce. However, having said that, this guy has spent 2 years in the Lazio system. If he spends 1 year in the Milan system, he becomes a homegrown Italian qualified player. So that's another thing. But I absolutely think that with Pulisic, with Chukuwueze, and Salamakers still here, Messias still here, I don't see him staying here. Probably he'll go out on a loan. But whether he was bought to the club for a loan or to be maybe even an under 19 team, who knows? I would give it a 3 out of 5. Loftus-Cheek, Rajat.
I think there's a split opinion on this, and while he's a product of Cobham Academy of Chelsea, where a lot of people were very high on him before his injuries. He was considered as the best product that the academy ever produced. There's obviously a lot of quality that he brings from that perspective. He is a very modern midfielder. Liao described him as someone unlike anyone else in Serie A, which I think is very high praise. And the way he bossed Milan's midfield in the Champions League was indicative of what he's bringing to the table. Of course, Milan's president, Scaroni, mentioned that they're trying to build a more European team. And so Loftus-Cheek, with the abilities and the talents that he possesses, represents that evolution of Milan. And I think he's going to boss most midfields in Serie A. He would be very strongly able in the Champions League, comes with a plethora of experience at just 26, 27 years of age. My question is in terms of the end product. He's not a defensive midfielder. He's not an attacking midfielder. What exactly does he bring to the table apart from the dynamism? Because in the modern game especially, you need output. And my question is, what are we going to expect from Ruben Loftus-Cheek? I would have been elated if Loftus-Cheek was a depth signing. As things stand, he's most likely going to be a starter. And for a team that's competing for a Serie A title, wants to win the Champions League in the next 3 to 5 years, I don't think Loftus-Cheek is the necessary profile of player that they should be going after. But I think he serves the purpose right now. I'd go with a bland 3.
I can't really disagree with Raj's rating. I think it does raise questions about the role that Milan envisioned for him. If obviously we'll talk about the possible outgoings later and all that type of stuff, but is Rade Krunic really going to be the only defensive midfielder on this side? I think that's a problem. And I agree that his athleticism, his ability to run, I read some scout reports about him today in preparation for the podcast, and they were very, very praiseworthy of his ability to sort of run in between the lines and sort of provide depth and sort of provide additional runners into the box, something that Milan have desperately needed tactically. So players moving forward from deep and joining the attack is definitely something that would absolutely help unlocking defences that Milan have struggled with in the modern era, regardless of coach. And I think Ruben Loftus-Cheek can help with that. But I agree with Raj. I can't sit here and say, oh, absolutely, he's going to score 10 goals from midfield. He's going to provide 7 assists and he's going to be a really good Metzala type attacking midfielder. And I absolutely know that he's also not going to be a defensive destroyer that breaks up the play either. It's a good signing in isolation, in a vacuum. I think the price is good, etc. But I think it raises further questions about the dynamics of the rest of the team that I don't think the squad has answered. I don't think the management have answered yet either. But I think in a vacuum, it's a 3 out of 5 signing.
I totally agree with the thoughts that you're saying. I would rather devote it to a 2 out of 5 especially because of the timing of the transfer. This was our first transfer after we sold Tonali. Okay. If Reijnders was that signing after Tonali, we would have understood we have done an upgrade in that position, because Reijnders seems to be, one of the better midfielders that we have bought in recent times. Loftus-Cheek is neither here nor there, and he has all to prove. In another era, probably we would have got Loftus-Cheek on a loan with a option, or maybe loan with an obligation, but not a outright sale. And Chelsea was trying to decrease their squad size. The leverage was with the buying club. So I feel that the Milan here should have gone for a loan with an option, loan with an obligation. Just see how his fitness stands up. So I feel this is a 2 out of 5. If this deal was done in the later half of August, it would have made perfect sense for me. But doing this deal way up in July, right after you have done a massive sale, didn't make sense for me. So 2 out of 5. Next one, Pulisic.
I think this is a really interesting one. I think this has been a divisive transfer, to say the least, online, because clearly he's talented and obviously he's an incredibly popular player among obviously American Milan fans, and he has that kind of like reputation as being like an incredibly talented young player since he came from Dortmund and all that type of stuff. I'm yet to be convinced that this is going to be the kind of signing that Milan envision that he's going to be. I think I like his versatility, but at the same time, it's sort of like a confirmation that he's not particularly carved out in whatever his best position is. He's not a striker. He's not really a number 10. Certainly not in the traditional sense. He's pacey enough to play wide, and I think that's where Milan appear to be playing him. He's played on the right-hand side of a 4-3-3 at the moment, which also then raises questions about, well, is he going to rotate with Chukuwueze? And I don't think that's the best idea. I think most Milan fans envision Chukuwueze and Leao being the starting wingers, and that kind of leaves Pulisic as the odd man out. 24 games for Chelsea last season, 1 goal, 1 assist, 18 of which were substitution appearances. It's not entirely reassuring, to be honest. You combine that with the injury profile, you combine that with the availability area of this. Now, I will temper it by saying that Pulisic and Ruben Loftus-Cheek spent last year as maybe the most chaotic season any top Premier League club has ever had. And I'm hopeful that Milan can bring the best out of him, but I'm not entirely convinced yet. We'll see. I think for 20 million, you take a punch, sure, you've got the money that comes in. That's absolutely fine. But I think I'm going to give it a 2.5 to a 3 out of 5.
Understand the skepticism around him, purely from a sporting perspective, even if Fulani on ESPN says, no, this was largely a sporting decision, not a commercial decision. I think the writing's on the wall. This was very clearly a commercial decision, because him coming into the club sent the sales ringing through the roof. And this for me is more of a blockbuster signing, which kind of puts Milan back on the continental map, gives us a lot of recognition as being a serious player. While, of course, the other forwards who've arrived, probably we can expect more in terms of on-the-pitch output. Sam touched upon how miserable Pulisic's productivity last season was. That productivity was also obviously supplemented with ankle and knee problems. And the previous season, he had just 8 goal contributions in 22 games, secures double-digit goals and assists, which one of the players we'll be talking about soon has done in the previous season. I don't think Pulisic is that player, and I don't think he's going to be that player this season either, because like Sam mentioned, he's most likely not going to be a starter in a 4-3-3. So, but I'm very happy to have a shiny name in the squad, and on that account, I would probably give it a 3.5.
Wow, you're very generous. If you ask me, I would have given Pulisic 2, just like probably 2, or like Sam probably gave 2.5. So I would have given a 2, like I gave for Loftus-Cheek, if we had stuck to the 4-2-3-1. But buying Pulisic for 20 million plus to be either the sum of Liao or the sum of Chukuwueze uh, is pointless. Again, in another universe, we would have probably done it as a loan with an option or loan with an obligation. It absolutely doesn't make any sense to buy him on a sporting level for 20 million, knowing his injury history, knowing that he will not be able to contribute as a starter in a 4-3-3. Yeah, he can be a depth. It's a little bit confusing where this guy will play. Of course, he's not like a settled Serie A guy that he can play left, right, or center and he will still deliver. If you do that, you are just ensuring that Pulisic will probably next year also become our latest in line like CDK. Uh, I'll probably give it a one. And
Oh, that's harsh. That's
the
really
the
harsh.
the commercial aspect is the only thing that I see at this point in time. I'll be happy to change it maybe in the mid season, but I do not see him contributing. So yeah, if he proves me wrong, I would be happy to change my opinion and say that yeah, I was wrong. Thierry Reijnders.
Yeah, I think this is. I mean, is this the best Milan signing for really in terms of like the way that you feel about it for a couple of years for me? This is a player who has the potential to be Milan's best midfielder the moment he walks through the gates of Milanello. The statistics and the next 8 stats like are really, really impressive. Like if you sort of look at the way that he's been brought in, among all players in the non-top 5 leagues, he's in the 95th percentile for shot and goal creation, the 90th percentile for passing accuracy, the 97th for passing into the penalty areas, which means that he's clearly an incredibly direct midfielder. Which when was the last time we had a really direct creative midfielder? He's really good at being direct with his runs. He's accurate at passing. He's good at interceptions. The underlying defensive numbers again aren't great. He's not a great tackler. But he's not been brought in to do that. If you envisage a midfielder where he's one side of Krunic and hopefully Benacer after Christmas, and there's another midfielder on the right hand side, whether that's Ruben Loftus-Cheek or somebody else. I'm confident in at least 2/3 of that being really solid. He's also incredibly young. He's clearly got a lot of potential. From a nostalgic Milan perspective, isn't it nice when we buy young Dutch players? Doesn't that feel good? Isn't that a lovely feeling once again? It's like with Brazilians as well. Like it just feels right, doesn't it, to see a player from that nationality in a Milan shirt, and that I think that has helped. I'm massively pro this signing. The fee was great. The fact that he turned down Premier League clubs to join us also shows that he's really focused on the club as well. But I think he has a lot to offer, and I think this time next year we're having a conversation where he has been one of the key contributors to however Milan's Serie A campaign has gone. I'm giving this a 4 out of 5 only because we don't know if he will actually produce. It's not like a guarantee of elite production in terms of what Milan are doing at the moment, what they're building towards. This is as perfect a transfer.
Well, nothing more to add to what Sam said. Particularly, I think I completely concur with this assessment. It was a terrific analysis. Reijnders has gone on record to say that he spoke to Xavi. Xavi wanted him to come to Barcelona, and Reijnders preferred Milan over Barcelona, and he made SMS look anonymous when they played against each other. So it's something that we are very excited about. We've seen flashes of his brilliance in the friendlies as well, and the more match fit he becomes, the more we will see. I think this is quite a game-changing signing that we've made, and perhaps goes a long way in appeasing the fan base after losing Tonali. I'll give this a 4 as well.
Yeah. I would be slightly more optimistic here and put it as a 4.5. Because somewhere deep in my heart, when Dutch or Brazilians are playing for Milan, it feels like things are normal. He has all the right stats, but getting it on the money in the league will still be a challenge. I mean, this is the guy whose purchase rightfully can be claimed to have upgraded our midfield. after we sold Tonali. This one was a surprise. Noah Okafor, I thought that we were all over him last year, but then it suddenly went away. There was Lois Openda, there was Florian Balogun, so many other strikers. And then suddenly, after the deal had been done, I think people were not aware that we had already done this deal.
Okafor joining the club, the news when it broke out took everyone by surprise. I think there was a unified feeling of ecstasy across the fan base, and I was one of them. Just to kind of get a sense of how good this summer market has been for us. Last season, like you mentioned, Okafor was one of the players that we were apparently pursuing, and he was touted to be Liao's replacement when Liao moves on this summer. And Liao has stayed, signed a contract extension, and we've additionally signed Okafor. And Okafor comes in, there's a lot of questions in terms of where will he play. He's primarily a centre forward who can operate on the flanks as well. He's exceptional on the left wing. We've seen that against us. We've seen that when he played in other games in the Champions League as well. He's quite explosive on the left-hand side. And the problem you had mentioned about Pulisic and where is he going to play? I think that question can be asked of Okafor as well, because he's not going to be a bona fide starter unless he replaces Giroud up top. What I think we've really solved for is depth in attack, and I think Okafor and Pulisic will be addressing that. Imagine bringing off Liao and bringing on Pulisic or bringing on Okafor. It suddenly changes the intensity and the quality of Milan's bench. For me, Okafor, given how sudden it was, given the cost of the transfer, the value of the transfer, is a 4 on 5. I do have to highlight that he is recovering from a metatarsal injury, which ended his season last year. He had an exceptional start to the season where he had 6 goal contributions in 8 games in the league. Obviously, we saw glimpses of that in the Champions League as well. But after the metatarsal injury, we don't know what player is going to wear the red and black and step on the pitch. So that's something we need to look forward to.
Yeah, I really like this as well. I agree that the prospect of shifting from a potential Liao replacement to a supplement to Liao is such a positive. And assuming that he's fit and he's healthy and he's athletic and as pacey as he looked prior to the injury, this is a massive win. 14 million, I believe, was the price for a player that had 42 goal contributions in 71 Austrian Bundesliga games. It's really good at the age of 21, 22 to have that kind of statistical output over the course of his early career yet. And I agree. I mean, when we were playing Inter in the Champions League, I don't want to dwell on it too long because it's since developed a drinking habit, but the idea that we were struggling in the first 20, 30 minutes, we really had no options at all to handle it. We just had to this is just the best we've got. And if this doesn't work, we're screwed. That had been the Milan philosophy really under Pioli for the last couple of years. And this changes that dynamic entirely. I think the fee's really good. I think the fact that his versatility is a plus. The fact that he doesn't have to come in and immediately be the number one striker. He can recover from his injury behind Giroud. He can come off the bench in a variety of positions across that front three. And all the clips that I've seen show a player that is rangy, athletic, very good in tight situations. He's got quick feet. All the stuff that Milan have really only got from Rafael and had to rely on Rafael to provide this directness, this ability to dribble, this ability to get behind the defences. The fact that we've got 4 or 5, even 6 players vying for 3 positions gives us the kind of depth necessary to continue to succeed in Europe and to succeed on a domestic level. So I'm going to give this a 4 out of 5.
I completely agree with both of you here. I think this is a very positive signing. I think this guy will be, the Ante Rebic substitute replacement in the team. When Rebic was his head was functioning, he was a 10G plus goal plus assist kind of a guy. I think he would be that guy. And even if he plays in place of Giroud, the combination of Giroud with Liao and Chukuwueze will play completely differently to the combination of Okafor with Liao and Chukuwueze. I would probably put it as 3.5 for me, a solid 3.5.
An incredibly exciting transfer, I'll be honest. The pace that he provides, the sort of dribbling, the directness, is a sort of like a human highlight. Really had a brilliant season for Villarreal. I think the possibility of doubling down on what Rafael provides on the left, with Chukuwueze being what many Milan fans are hoping is the starting right winger. Although I'm tentative, I think Pulisic is probably going to start the season as the starting right winger, and I think Chukuwueze might develop into that as it goes on, but we'll see. He's clearly incredibly direct and really fun footballer. Just a really fun player to watch, and really fast, really pacey, really electric. And what it does is it doesn't allow really teams to just entirely shift the field towards that left-hand side, which has been Theo Hernandez and Leo on that left side has been pretty much 80% of Milan's offensive output so often, and teams have been able to zero on that and completely ignore the right-hand side. With Chukuwueze playing on the right wing, that's just you can't do that at all. And players of that kind of pace are really interesting to see in Serie A, because that trait does often translate well. Again, the price was good; it was well negotiated. The fact that he's played in European football, played for a reputable Spanish team in Villarreal, is really useful as well. We're not bringing him in from one of these next 8 leagues where you kind of don't necessarily know how well they're going to adapt until they actually start playing. I've seen Chukuwueze play in European football. I've seen him play for a top-class league. I've seen him perform well in those circumstances, and that's reassuring for me. I'm going to give this a 3.5 out of 5, because obviously we don't yet know if it's going to work out in Italy just yet, but I think he's got all the traits and all the reputation available to him to be able to be a success.
Yeah, he's called the Nigerian Robin or the Nigerian Flash. So for those who want to understand his style of play and how quick he is, those two nicknames certainly indicate that. And Sam's explained his physical attributes, but in addition to what that will do at Milan is, of course, create a lot of openings in the center of the pitch, because when he plays, when he holds the ball, he's extremely good in tight spaces. He's incredibly good at dribbling through extremely tight, cordoned off spaces. And when he has the ball, he's going to create defensive overloads on the right hand side for the opposition. What that's going to do, especially in a 4-3-3, is open up the middle of the pitch for somebody like a Reijnders or somebody like a Ruben Loftus-Cheek to run into the box, create an additional scoring outlet for Milan. And of course, ease the pressure on Leao. Chukuwueze, he's an incredible talent. It was obviously manifested and displayed when he played against Real Madrid last season. I urge people to go and watch his game against Real Madrid, where he scored twice, and he was absolutely exceptional. They couldn't do anything to hold him off. The problem with him is he's not consistent. He's in his mid-20s. Hopefully, the older he gets, the more consistent he will become. But the way to gauge his success at Milan aren't going to be his goals and assists. It's going to be what impact he has on the players that he plays with. How many goals and assists would midfielders be able to score because of him? How much more potent does Leao become because of him? So it's the value he adds to the players that play with him, apart from the value he individually brings to the table. For me, I think he was the best right winger on the market. And Milan went ahead and signed him for the right price, under the right circumstances. I felt that this was the best signing Milan could have done. And because of that, I would put him at a 4.5 and 5.
Wow, that's really generous. I am also very excited to have the Leao Chukuwueze duel is really something that we all are waiting to see. But right wingers from Villarreal, whose first name is Samuel, doesn't go well with Milan. So I will, for that reason alone, I will just deduct a half point there and put it as a 4 out of 5 signing. But another thing that he has to develop, apart from the consistency that Rajat you mentioned, is that he would also have to beef up his defensive game, because our right back, whoever plays there, is not going to be the best guy. And opposition teams will probably be, ganging up on that right back. So we would need our, right out to actually come in and help out, which Messias and Salamakas used to do a lot. So this guy will have to learn that. The final piece, which has not yet happened, and that's why you do not see any Milan jersey, is Yunus Musah. So Yunus Musah, 20-year-old, started his career in Italy. Then he went to Arsenal and then to Valencia. Rajat, what do you feel about this 20 million signing?
I'm going to offend a lot of people with my opinion. I feel this is a plain and simple marketing move. I know I'm going to offend a lot of American people who are hearing this, but I think Musah for 20 million in the current context of the financial limitations that we're operating in makes very little sense to me. Of course, he plays as a six, as this shirt shows, for the United States men's national team. But he's a number 8. He likes to play progressively with the ball. He's not a defensive player, and for people to assume that he's going to come in, slot in the center of the park, be the number 6 that Milan need, with RLC and Reijnders on either side of him, I think is a bit presumptuous. Of course, there is a certain marketing angle given the owners of Milan, and I feel this is more from that perspective rather than from an athletic or sporting perspective that the signing has been made. I would have much rather this money be directed towards a defensive midfielder, and I think there are a lot of such players who Milan could have signed for maybe 60 to 70% of that amount. Especially Serie A proven defensive midfielders who would have immediately slotted in and disposed of Krunic from the middle, from the starting lineup. I think he's very raw. All the American pundits that I've heard talk about him have urged for patience with him. He's most likely going to be bedded in very slowly by Pioli. So I would give it a 2 out of 5. I'm not extremely excited about it, at least for the short term, maybe in the long term.
I'm not as cynical as Raj on the signing, but I can share his reticence to praise it necessarily. I do agree that he's not a defensive midfielder, and the idea that he's just going to be the next defensive midfielder that Milan need is, I agree, it's presumptuous, and it's an assumption that the fans have made because the squad is the management team have correctly identified so often lots of players that appear to be making sense, and it appears that Musah is the next one who's going to fit into that. However, maybe ignoring the marketing sense of it, which I can sympathise with, maybe at his age, maybe at the fact that he is raw, maybe there's a belief among Pioli and the management that they can mould him into a more defensively friendly player, because he's clearly very athletic. He clearly works very hard. You see all the clips, he's constantly running around. Maybe Milan think that by the age of 22, 23, he can be morphed into a player that can break the lines. Not necessarily a sitting player, because I don't think that's in his wheelhouse necessarily, but can he be a defensive breaking the lines destroyer type that could be a part of a dynamic midfield? I think Milan are starting to try to move towards a more fluid midfield system anyway, where individuals don't necessarily have the same kind of regimented roles, and instead there's an element of fluidity and switching around and swapping positions depending on circumstances. And I think that's why they've voted to buy these kind of sort of dynamic athletes first, and then think, oh, we'll figure out the best position later. We'll just get a talented player now, and we'll figure out what we can sort of move them into. The difficulty with that, of course, is that Italy tends not to be a league that really is particularly patient when it comes to those kind of players. Like it is like a regimented, more regimented system historically. I think he's going to come in and develop alongside and come off the bench while they try and figure out where best that he is. I'm going to give it a 3 out of 5 because A, he's 20. So the idea that he's defined as a player, I think he's been nowhere near that point at all. He's clearly talented. He's clearly shown some good performances, and I can see where the management's going with signing him. But right now, he's a signing for the future. He's a signing for the next 2 to 3 years.
Again, probably you'll call me harsh, but I do remember we had a 12 million buy option on the Belgian under 21 captain Astor Ranks, or under 19 captain Astor Ranks. I don't see Astor Ranks too much worse for talent wise, at least from Yunus Musah, whom we chose to buy at 20 billion. So if you ask me, the nearly 60 to 70 million that we have spent on Loftus-Cheek, Yunus Musah, and Pulisic, I don't feel that they're worth it. Another, like I said, in another world, we would have done them with loan with option, loan with obligation, or whatever. But paying that money out front doesn't make sense when none of them are probably going to increase the quality of the side. We did have Astor Ranks. He could have, played that, that bench guy who could have come in as and when needed. We sold Brescianini to Frosinone. I just do not see the merits of spending 20 billion in the middle of July. I mean, you have 20 billion left over. You do it as an end of August, like a additional thing that the manager would have wanted. I do not see Pioli has asked for this guy based on whatever he has performed anywhere else. Whether he's a Moncada signing, whether he's a Furlani signing, whether he's a Jenny Cardinale signing, I don't know. But he definitely doesn't look like a Pioli signing at this point in time. So I would again go with 1 out of 5 for Yunus Musah. Let's now go to the outgoings. We'll not rate it, but maybe we'll just speak about it.
Well,
Daniel Maldini.
I don't fully understand this boy. I don't know how good he really is. Of course, he scored against Milan, which I think was
and he
written in the
scored against
stars.
Inter also.
And he scored against Inter, the only 2 goals he scored last season. Of course, having a Maldini at the club always feels good. But, there were, again, some players who were wax lyrical about his quality. They said he's the most talented player, naturally talented player in the squad. We never really got to see it. And I don't think Milan currently are in a place where they can provide him with that grooming ground to actualize himself into the footballer he can become. Going on loan to Empoli, I believe, is what's happened here, and I think he will get more playing time next season over there, and it's a good move for him. We have not let go of him entirely. I think the intention is to see how he grows and whether there will be room for him in the club. Of course, if under Pioli the club moves in the direction of playing in a 4-3-3, then there is no room for him because he sees himself as a number 10. But I'm quite curious to see how he'd grow. He's still very young, but there is a lot of talent, and it's up to him whether he can live up to his paternal name.
Milan still believes in him because we do have a counter option. So
Yeah.
that's there. Marco Brescianini, Sam.
Yeah, I think I had a look at Brescianini. I think he's a solid player. I think if you look at his history in terms of what he's not going to provide anything for Milan in the immediate if we'd kept him around. He played 37 games in Serie B for Cosenza, and he's moving up to a Serie A club in Frosinone, which I think is a good move for him for his career. Without being too cynical, for a club that's desperate to bring in young talent, for them to decide to ship out players of youth on loan he's not exactly a ringing endorsement for the kind of player that they think he is. If they're like, okay, we'd love to bring in lots of young midfielders. Well, you've got a young midfielder in Brescianini. Yeah, not him though, somebody else. Yeah. It kind of doesn't give me the vibe that they're exactly thinking that he's going to be the future of the club. But he's going to get Serie A experience. He's going to play regularly for a Serie A club. We'll see what the situation is. Clearly playing 37 games last season for Cosenza isn't enough to get into Milan team, rightly so.
Sandro Tonali.
Well, the emblem of Milan, right? I mean, he represents a lot of what Milan actually are. Of course, with him going, Milan's also very rapidly lost its Italian identity, especially if you look at the signings. But honestly, Newcastle gave us an offer we couldn't refuse. And I think it was devastating for Milan to accept at that point in time, devastating for the fans to come to terms with at that point in time. But it's very difficult to turn down that offer in this economic climate. Milan, of course, aren't run by oil money. And, 1 month after his departure, we can objectively look at this sale and see how the money's been reinvested. And I think it's fair to say that the squad is significantly better now than it was when Tonali was around. So it was a bitter pill to swallow, but for a better future.
It was a hard pill to swallow, and me as a symbolic sale, really, more of a confirmation that Milan have moved into this different aspects of obviously their iterations of football club. Milan are now much closer to Benfica and Borussia Dortmund than they ever are going to be now to Bayern Munich and Real Madrid, unfortunately, as he's currently constructed. And as Raj points out, unless somebody from the Middle East or somebody with a great deal of money wants to purchase the club, then this is going to be the way that the football team has to operate. But if and I hated it, I hated the sale. It really hurt because I was incredibly excited when he brought in. But if you have to remove your personal feelings about it, and you have to be more pragmatic. I'll be very interested, actually, and this is meant with no shade of bitterness whatsoever. I wish him all the best. I'll be very interested to see how he does in the Premier League.
I absolutely agree. I mean, all the 4 Champions League qualifying Italian teams had one major sale from their first 11. Lazio sold SMS, Inter sold Onana, Napoli sold Kim. The point that hurt about Tonali was that we, as the fan, felt Tonali was one of us as a fan of the club. And of course, it is not possible in this day and age to say I will let go of doubling or tripling my salary, annual salary, for the sake of love. But I understand that Tonali initially actually had said that I don't want to go. This is a deal that I'm not interested in, when he moved to the Italy under-21 team. And subsequently, when the club said that, yeah, we have accepted it, he broke down in tears. At least that's what we have heard. That says that he still is a fan. There's a fan inside that guy. Sam, I thought you didn't say it in as many words, but I'm going to say it. It may come down to that Newcastle, in this kind of dog kind of EPL, where last year Newcastle scraped into the top 4 because Liverpool, Chelsea, Tottenham, they were all having, like a shitty year. Newcastle may not come into the top 6. Who knows? And like Scamacca or some of the other Italian guys who have gone to EPL, Newcastle might request a loan back to Serie A for Sandro Tonali too. Maybe in 2 years' time, who knows?
I liked Rebic, but 9.2 million a year for the player of that production is ridiculous. Like, his agent was to be dancing around the negotiating table when that contract was signed. They were like absolutely astonishing money. The fact that Milan found a willing buyer, you know what I mean? Availability for the club for him to go and get that massive wage off the club, and I wish him obviously all the best. But it was a great financial decision for Milan to make, and I'm glad that it was dealt with incredibly quickly.
Maybe not in a completely identical comparison, but I think Gabbia is a younger iteration of Romagnoli in many ways. A traditional centre back, very conservative in the way he plays. Holds the line. Is usually somebody who sticks very close to the striker. Tends to be relatively good in the air. But the modern game, I think, is very different to the kind of defender that Gabbia is. So Gabbia going to Villarreal, I think is a good move. I think it was I'm sure it didn't work independent of the Chukuwueze deal. I'm sure this was also part of the negotiation. He might find a lot more game time in Villarreal. He might actually find it a lot more appealing, a lot more welcoming. Of course, they've lost Pau Torres. I'm not saying Gabbia is Pau Torres' replacement, but the fans of Villarreal are used to good defensive players, good defenders, and hopefully Gabbia makes Milan proud in Spain.
The final one that has not yet happened, but again, a potential. Sam, up to you.
Divisive conversation on Milan Twitter at the moment. You've got one half of it who are convinced that this is like the worst thing that Milan could have possibly done is letting this kid go after a year without letting him figure out. And the other half are like burning De Kellaere shirts outside of their front garden, sort of like screaming that he needs to get out as quickly as humanly possible. I can't help but feel sorry for him. I really can't. I mean, he didn't ask us to spend 35 million euros on him. He didn't ask us to make him our jewel of last year's transfer window. But he was clearly out of his depth at the moment. In Serie A, he looked lifeless at times playing for Milan, bless his heart. And I don't think we ever really figured out where the best place to play him was. I don't think we really ever tried to really play him behind the striker, which is kind of where he seemed to be best fit for at that moment. And with Brahim Diaz, there was a ready-made player who already played in the kind of areas that De Kellaere played, who was already more experienced and better at that point in his career. So it was a really hard thing for him to walk into. However, if anyone's going to get anything out of him, it's going to be Gianpiero Gasperini at Atalanta. That if anyone's going to do it for him, it's going to be them. That club with that infrastructure is as good a situation as he's going to play in, and it keeps him in Italy. It gets him used to this club and the culture and that type of stuff. Because I mean, he's a baby. He's such a young player, and he's the first year in Italy. His first year outside of his home country, playing from Club Brugge, and it's a lot for him to adapt to. Like, he deserves at least the next couple of years. The idea of selling him now for like 20 million to like Real Sociedad is just absurd. That'd be ridiculous just to take that 50 million loss now. When we can loan him out, he could get comfortable, he could play better, and in a year or two's time, he's back at Milan and sort of slotting into what we need.
No, but
I also think,
but that
sorry,
that is where there is the issue. The deal that they are structuring is there is a paid loan, and so paid loan meaning they will be paying, let's say, 2 million or 3 million for the loan, and then there is an option to buy at around 23 million. So essentially, if this guy becomes like the CDK that we knew from the year before, from the Club Brugge days, then Atalanta buys him for 23 million, sells him for 70 million. On the other hand, if he doesn't click with Gasperini, he comes back because it's an option. He comes back, and Milan has an asset which has deteriorated even more, because now he has spent a year at Milan, he has spent a year at Atalanta, and Atalanta has chosen not to take it. So I mean, like Caldara, Mattia Caldara, right? So
yeah.
So it's a lose-lose kind of a scenario. You either loan him out and say, yes, we trusted you, so we will give Atalanta an option and we'll keep a counter option like they did for Daniel Maldini. That's done for Maldini, right? Or you say that, okay, fine, it's a dry loan. You don't get to buy him. Then he comes back.
I don't see any room for him in the squad. I don't see any room for him in the system that Pioli plays, because Pioli plays with a single striker formation. Whereas even at Club Brugge, he played as part of a two-striker formation. He partnered with Haaland. So very few clubs, even in Italy, play with two strikers. I think Gasperini has an iteration of a two-striker formation sometimes, and sometimes he plays with a single striker. But I think Gasperini can shoehorn him into the squad or make him a part of the way they play. which is why it makes sense for him to go there. And the reason why, I mean, I was extremely chuffed when he joined Milan. I loved it. I thought it was a dream signing for Milan because he had a lot of name value and he fit the profile of player that Milan were going after. But I don't think, if there is trust in Pioli and the system that Milan want to persist with going forward, there simply isn't a way to put this boy on the pitch. He's not a 10. He can't play as a 10, clearly. I would very much like to keep him because I personally think De Ketelaere is a great player, can be a very good player, has great potential, rather. I've written quite extensively about what he can bring on the pitch, but I think for the greater good of the club, it's best to let go of him.
No, I completely agree. I feel he's a more Muller kind of a guy rather than rather than somebody who would be an out and out striker. And Noah Lang was also a very, very mobile striker. He was not just a pure two striker kind of a play.
Yeah.
If I feel that if Pioli had somehow played CDK with Liao, whoever played Messias or whoever played on the right side, I don't care. But if these two had played, I think they would have worked out much better rather than playing CDK off Giroud while Liao was on the other side. That kind of didn't work. But anyway, what's done is done. What I still have a grouse about is the way that this deal is being structured. So that's about it.
Thanks, guys. Hope you've enjoyed the first episode. We've covered all the transfers. We have so much more to share with you, so many more opinions and views and interesting numbers and perspectives to bring to you. So do stay tuned in. Give the page a follow. Give each one of us a follow. I'm available on Twitter at Rajat Kumar, which is my name with no spaces in between and an at before it.
If you want to hear me ranting about Milan, that's at Sam Calcio on Twitter. I'm never calling it X ever in my life. And I also do some music stuff on there as well, and some various other rantings. If you want to find out what my thoughts are in a dental office in 3 weeks' time, then that's...
You can follow our podcast on the Milan Pod. You can follow me on @Rossoneri. Thank you.